She was still wearing her cleaning uniform when she walked into the boardroom. The bleach smell followed her through the double doors. That sharp, chemical scent that clings to fabric no matter how many times you wash it. 43 men in tailored suits turned to look at her. The kind of suits that cost more than her monthly rent. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and the soft, deliberate click of her worn flats against the marble floor. Michael Irwin stood at the head of the table, white-knuckling a stack of reports like they were the only thing keeping him upright. His collar was dark with sweat. $500 million, 30 minutes left before it all collapsed, and his interpreter was lying in a hospital bed across town. Then Anna spoke. Monsieur, permettez-moi de vous présenter notre vision. The French rolled off her tongue like silk, smooth, unhurried, precise. One of the Beaumont executives, a silver-haired man who hadn't smiled once since landing, looked up from his phone, slowly, the way a man does when something genuinely surprises him. The whisper came from somewhere to Michael's left. Sharp, dismissive. Michael didn't move. Anna's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Votre temps est précieux. Le nôtre aussi. The silver-haired man set his phone face down on the table. For the first time in 3 hours, he leaned forward. Michael felt his stomach unclench by exactly 1 degree. He exhaled through his nose, slow and careful, as if any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile thing had just shifted in this room. His eyes moved to Anna, really moved to her, for perhaps the first time in the 2 years she had cleaned his office every morning before dawn. She wasn't looking at him. She was already looking at the Beaumont team, her spine straight, her hands resting loose and open on the table. Calm the way a river is calm, not still, but moving with enormous, quiet purpose beneath the surface. Everything that happened next, the deal, the confession, the moment that changed both their lives, started long before that boardroom. It started in the dark corridors of the 42nd floor, long before sunrise, when a woman with a mop and a dog-eared French novel moved through the building like a ghost nobody thought to see. But to understand what happened, we need to go back to where it all began. Before we continue, if this story already has you hooked, subscribe and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. You won't want to miss what comes next. 4:37 in the morning. The 42nd floor was empty except for Anna. She moved through the corridor the way water moves around stone, quiet, efficient, leaving no trace. Her cart's left wheel had a small wobble that made it tick against the marble with every rotation. Tick, tick, tick. She knew every sound this building made before sunrise. She knew which office smelled like stale takeout containers on Monday mornings, and which one always had fresh eucalyptus from the weekend cleaning crew that serviced the executive suite. Michael Irwin's office smelled like neither. The fun is just beginning. Tell us what city you're from in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. The tension is rising. Who's watching from where? Like and subscribe to the channel. More to come. Tell us in the comments who's from which country, and give us a like and subscribe. The plot thickens. Let's check our geography. Tell us where you are now. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. We're just warming up. Tell us where you're watching from. Give the video a like and hit the subscribe button. The climax is near. Share where you're from, like, and be sure to subscribe. Events are unfolding rapidly. Write your city in the chat, give it a like, and subscribe so you don't get lost. The juiciest part is yet to come. Let's get started. Get to know each other. Where are you from? Like and subscribe right now. The suspense is building. Tell us where you're watching this episode from, and reward us with a like and a subscribe. The excitement is running high. Tell us what city you're from now. Give us a big like and subscribe to the channel. It smelled like cold coffee and paper, the particular smell of a man who worked until midnight and arrived again before dawn. Anna paused at his door, sprayed the glass panel, and wiped it in 3 clean strokes. She did not look at the desk. She had learned not to. Inside her cart, wedged between the extra garbage bags and the spare roll of paper towels, sat a paperback. The spine was cracked and retaped with clear adhesive. The title, in faded gold letters, Les Miserables. The original, unabridged, in French. She was on page 412. At 6:15, she took her break in the service stairwell on the 39th floor, where the fluorescent light buzzed like a tired insect and the concrete held the cold, long past sunrise. She unwrapped a sandwich from wax paper, ate half, and called home. Her son, Marcus, answered on the second ring. Quote 4. Her voice dropped to something softer. Quote 5. He was 11. His voice still had that half-child roughness to it. A pause. Anna was quiet for a moment. Through the stairwell window, she could see the first gray line of morning pressing against the Manhattan skyline, the city just beginning to remember itself. Quote, 12, quote, she replied. Quote, 13, quote, Marcus seemed to accept that. They talked for 4 more minutes about the history test, about the loose handle on the kitchen cabinet she kept meaning to fix, about nothing important and everything that mattered. When she hung up, she sat for another 30 seconds, her thumb resting on the dark screen. Then she folded the wax paper neatly, tucked it into her pocket, and went back to work. By 7:45, she had cleaned 11 offices, 2 conference rooms, and the executive washroom at the end of the hall. She was refilling her mop bucket near the service elevator when she heard the first sound that didn't belong to the building's usual morning rhythm. Running footsteps on marble, urgent, expensive shoes, and then a voice, clipped, shredded, at the edges, coming from the direction of the executive floor, underscore, quote, underscore, 14, underscore, Anna's hands stilled on the bucket handle. Her head didn't turn, but she listened. Michael Irwin's assistant, Caroline, stood in the corridor with her tablet pressed flat against her chest like a shield. Her heels had stopped clicking. That alone told him everything. Sir, every French interpreter in the city is already booked. Her voice was careful, measured, the tone of someone delivering news they've rehearsed 3 times. Michael's jaw tightened. Stop listing what you tried. He turned toward the window at the end of the hall. 42 floors below, yellow cabs moved through the morning like slow fish. He pressed 2 fingers against the glass. Cold. He needed cold right now. The Beaumont group lands in 22 minutes, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Henri Beaumont does not conduct business in English. His legal team doesn't either. It's a point of principle for them. I've read every brief on this man. I know. 500 million, Caroline. She didn't answer. There was nothing to say to a number that size. Michael turned from the window. The sweat at his collar had soaked through the cotton. He could feel it, that particular cold dampness that arrives when panic decides to make itself physical. He picked up his phone, set it down, picked it up again. Quote, 23, quote, 24. He set the phone down hard enough that a pen rolled off his desk and dropped to the floor. Neither of them moved to pick it up. Down the corridor, barely visible past the bend, near the service elevator, a yellow cleaning cart stood beside the wall. The figure pushing it had paused, was refilling something, moving slowly, with the practiced economy of someone trained to be invisible in spaces like this. Caroline followed his gaze for half a second, then looked away. Irrelevant. Quote, 25. Quote, 26. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. She pressed her lips together. Quote, 27. Quote, dark circles sat beneath her eyes. Her blazer was the same one from yesterday. He noticed that now. She had been carrying this since before dawn, quietly, alone. He exhaled, ran one hand across the back of his neck. Quote, 28, quote, 29. The voice came from down the corridor, quiet, not timid, just quiet. the way a door is quiet when it's been hung perfectly level. Both of them turned. Anna stood beside her cart, a folded cloth in one hand. She wasn't looking at Caroline. She was looking directly at Michael, a thing she had never done in 2 years of cleaning his office before he arrived each morning. Quote, 30, quote, she replied simply. Quote, 31, quote, Caroline's chin lifted half an inch. The kind of unconscious movement that says, this is not a serious suggestion. Michael said nothing. His eyes moved to Anna's face, then to her uniform, then back to her face. The clock on the wall behind him read 7:49. The silence stretched for 3 full seconds. Michael's eyes stayed on Anna's face. She didn't shift her weight, didn't look at the floor. She simply stood beside her cart, the folded cloth in her hand, and waited. The way someone waits who has learned that patience is its own kind of answer. Caroline stepped forward, her voice dropping to something careful and flat. Quote, 32. Quote, 33. Michael asked. He was still looking at Anna, a pause. Caroline's tablet made a small sound as her grip tightened around it. The plastic creaked. She glanced at Michael with an expression that said everything she wasn't willing to say out loud. Michael took 3 steps toward Anna. Up close, he could see what he had never bothered to notice before. The fading at her collar where the bleach had thinned the fabric over hundreds of washes, the small callus on her right thumb from the mop handle, the dark circles that didn't come from one bad night, but from years of early mornings stacked end to end. I need someone who can handle legal and financial terminology, he replied, his voice tightening. Contract language, acquisition frameworks. This isn't a conversation, it's a negotiation. I understand acquisition frameworks, Anna replied. Her tone didn't change. Quote 43, Michael went very still. The air vent above them hummed. Somewhere down the corridor, an elevator chimed. Quote 44, His voice was quieter now. Anna didn't answer immediately. She set the folded cloth on the edge of her cart with the same deliberate care she used for everything. Because I've read the briefing documents. They're on the recycling pile outside your office every Thursday morning. Caroline exhaled sharply. Mr. Irwin, we cannot send a... She stopped herself, started again, choosing each word like she was stepping across ice. We need someone with credentials, someone the Beaumont team will take seriously from the first handshake. She's right to be cautious, Anna replied, looking at Caroline directly, not defensively, simply directly. It's a fair concern. The clock on the wall read 7:53, 7 minutes. Michael turned toward the window again for exactly 2 seconds. Then he turned back. Can you be ready in 5 minutes? Something moved behind Anna's eyes, a flicker that came and went so fast it was almost invisible. Her fingers found the edge of her cart, steadied there. Quote, 51. She glanced down at her uniform once. Just once. Quote, 52. Michael nodded once, the way a man nods when a decision has already been made and he's simply catching up to it. Go, he murmured. Now. Anna released the cart. Her steps were quiet on the marble as she moved toward the service corridor, but her spine was already different, straighter, as if something that had been held down had simply remembered it didn't have to be. She was back in 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Michael knew because he had been watching the clock with the focused desperation of a man counting down to something he couldn't stop. The conference room was filling with the quiet sounds of preparation, leather portfolios sliding onto the table, ice water being poured, the soft thud of the projector warming up. Caroline moved between tasks with rigid efficiency, not looking toward the corridor. Then Anna appeared in the doorway. She wore a dark navy blazer over a white blouse, simple, pressed, nothing expensive. But she wore it differently than she wore the uniform. Her shoulders sat differently. Her chin was level. She carried a single notepad and a pen, and she moved to the far end of the conference table without asking where she should stand. Michael crossed to her quickly, voice low. The core issue is the licensing structure. They want territorial exclusivity for West Africa. We need it limited to Francophone markets only. There's a distinction they'll try to blur. I understand the distinction, Anna replied, her tone matching his. Quiet. Precise. Beaumont's legal team will frame it as continental coherence. It's a negotiating posture, not a position. If they push, redirect to the infrastructure investment clause. It reframes the conversation around mutual benefit. Michael stared at her for a moment. You read the full contract brief. It was in the recycling pile. I read everything. He had no response to that. The elevator at the end of the hall chimed. Once they were here. Michael felt his stomach drop, then something else. Something that wasn't quite calm, but was adjacent to it. He straightened his jacket, rolled his shoulders back. The Beaumont group entered in a line of 4, 2 lawyers carrying matching black cases, a younger associate with a tablet, and at the front, Henri Beaumont himself. 71 years old, silver hair, the particular posture of a man who has never once in his life needed to raise his voice to be taken seriously. He scanned the room in 2 seconds. His eyes moved past Michael, past Caroline, and landed briefly on Anna. Something shifted in his expression, not quite surprise, more like a recalibration. Michael stepped forward and extended his hand. Beaumont replied in English with a small, thin smile. Then he switched to French, addressing the room at large. __quote _62 __. The 2 lawyers opened their cases simultaneously, the metal clasp snapping in perfect sequence. Anna stepped forward, and she answered him in French, not the hesitant, translated French of a textbook, but the warm, unhurried French of someone who had once lived inside the language. She mentioned his daughter's studies, the Lumiere Institute. She did not mention the university. Beaumont's chin lifted 1 degree. His eyes moved to her face. Quote, 63, he murmured. Do you know Lyon? Quote, 64, Anna replied. I worked there for 3 years. Something crossed Beaumont's face. Not warmth exactly. Recognition. The way one professional looks at another when the handshake confirms what the credentials already suggested. He sat. His lawyers sat. He folded his hands on the table and for the first time leaned slightly forward. The room breathed again. The first hour moved like a controlled demolition, precise, careful, every word placed with intention. Anna sat at the corner of the table, slightly apart from the 2 groups, which was exactly where she needed to be. She was not performing. She was translating. But more than that, she was navigating, finding the exact current between what each side wanted and what each side could accept. Her notepad had 3 lines of writing on it. The rest was blank. She didn't need notes. Michael watched her work. He had been in negotiations for 20 years. He knew what good looked like. Good was fast, accurate, invisible, a clean window that both sides could see through without knowing the glass was there. Anna was something past good. When Beaumont's lead attorney shifted into a denser regional dialect, a test, clearly, she didn't pause. She followed him into it like water, finding its level, and brought the meaning back across the table without a ripple. He began to wonder what, exactly, had been sitting outside his office every morning for 2 years. The recess came at 10:45. The Beaumont team stepped into the adjoining room. Michael moved to the window. Carolyn set a glass of water at his elbow, cold, with a faint smell of lemon, and lowered her voice. Carolyn murmured. Michael turned. Michael looked across the room to where Anna stood by herself near the far wall, her notepad open, reading something she'd written. Her blazer was still perfectly pressed. Her worn flats, the same ones from the corridor, were the only detail that didn't fit the room. She hadn't mentioned them. She hadn't apologized for them either. He walked to her. Quote, 69. She looked up, quote, 70. Michael went still. She didn't say, I told you so. She didn't need to. Her voice was even, patient. He stared at her for a long moment. The lemon water smell from Caroline's glass drifted between them. Outside the window, Manhattan moved in its usual indifferent rhythm. Helicopters, clouds, the distant percussion of a city that cared nothing for any single deal. How do you know Beaumont protocol at this level? He asked. Reading briefing documents doesn't explain lying. It doesn't explain knowing his daughter. It doesn't explain... He stopped, restarted. Who were you before this building? Anna closed her notepad, her thumb pressed against the cover. Steady, deliberate. That, she replied quietly, is a longer conversation than we have time for right now. The adjoining door opened. Beaumont's attorney appeared in the frame, black case in hand. Do you feel Anna is hiding even deeper secrets that no one in that room could possibly suspect? The second session began at 11:15. The conference room carried the particular stillness of a space where the air itself felt expensive, chilled, and faintly recycled, the kind that carries no smell at all, which somehow makes it feel colder than it is. 8 people around the table, 2 sides, and Anna, positioned exactly between them, her notepad open to a clean page. For 40 minutes, the conversation moved through technical clauses with the texture of sandpaper, slow, abrading, each side testing the edges of the other's tolerance. Anna rendered every word without inflection, without commentary, giving each side exactly what they said and nothing more. Then Beaumont's lead attorney, a compact man named Girard, leaned back in his chair and said something that was not in the briefing documents. He said it quietly, almost casually, the way a card player drops a card he's been holding for an hour. Anna's pen stopped moving. Michael noticed. He noticed because in 40 minutes, her pen had not stopped once. Girard continued, layering the next sentence on top of the first, building something that sounded reasonable, that sounded, in fact, almost generous. He was looking at Michael while he spoke, smiling faintly. Quote, 81, quote. Michael kept his voice level. Anna set her pen down. Quote, 82, quote, she paused. Quote, 83, quote, silence. Michael looked at Girard. Girard's smile didn't change. Caroline spoke from the corner, barely a whisper. Anna replied. Girard spoke again, his tone warm and entirely relaxed, as if he were discussing a pleasant change in weather. Anna listened. Then she looked at Michael and her voice was very quiet. Quote, 87, quote, 88. Michael replied, his jaw set. Quote, 89, quote. Anna turned to Girard and spoke. Not a translation, but a response, graceful and unhurried, with the cadence of someone who has spent years learning how to say no in ways that feel like not yet. Girard's eyes moved to her face, stayed there for 2 full seconds. He nodded once. He picked up his pen. He crossed something out. The dormancy clause was gone. Michael exhaled through his nose. He reached for his water glass and took a slow sip, the ice clicking softly against the crystal. At the far end of the table, Henri Beaumont had been watching Anna. Not the exchange, Anna, specifically. The way she held her posture, the particular way she waited after speaking, without filling the silence. He knew that posture. He had sat across tables from people who moved like that. When the session broke for lunch, Beaumont stood, adjusted his jacket, and walked, not toward Michael, not toward Girard, directly to Anna. Madame, he replied, his voice low and private. Where did you train? Anna met his eyes. Dakar, she replied, and before that, Abidjan. Beaumont's expression shifted. Something behind his eyes rearranged itself entirely. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 94, underscore, underscore. He murmured. Her hand found the edge of the table. Steadied there. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 95, underscore, underscore, she replied. The lunch break lasted exactly 32 minutes. Michael found Anna in the side office at the end of the hall. This Trucci, the one used for overflow calls and nothing else, smelling faintly of old carpet and the ghost of someone's microwave lunch from the week before. She was standing at the window with her phone in her hand, screen lit. She had been mid-dial when he knocked on the open door. She lowered the phone. "Meridian Partners," he replied, stepping inside. "You built their West Africa division." It wasn't a question. She had already confirmed it, but saying it out loud made it real in a way that the boardroom context hadn't fully allowed. Anna set her phone face down on the windowsill. "Senior Director of Francophone Market Development, Dakar office with oversight across Abidjan, Douala, and Lomé." She paused. "From 2011 to 2018. Michael was quiet for a moment. The carpet absorbed the silence the way old carpet does, completely, without echo. "What happened in 2018? Anna inhaled slowly, as if lifting old rubble from somewhere she'd sealed a long time ago. She kept her voice level, factual, the way someone speaks about a wound that has scar tissue over it now. Her thumb pressed against the dark screen of her phone. She turned from the window. Michael looked at her, really looked, the way he hadn't done in 2 years of passing her in the corridor without seeing her. The fading at her collar, the flats that had carried her through a boardroom they weren't designed for. The posture of someone who had once stood at the top of something and had learned, through necessity, to stand smaller. Quote, 107, he replied. His voice was quieter than he intended. Quote, 108, quote, 109, she replied simply. Quote, 110. A beat of silence settled between them, the kind that arrives when two people have said something true and neither wants to cover it with words. Then Michael straightened. Something had resolved behind his eyes. Anna's expression didn't change, but her chin lifted almost imperceptibly. Her voice was steady, unhurried. Quote, 115. He didn't hesitate. Done. I haven't finished. I know. A faint trace of something crossed his face, not quite a smile, but close. Take whatever time you need. Anna opened her mouth to continue. Caroline appeared in the doorway, slightly breathless, her tablet clutched against her chest. The Beaumont team is back at the table, she replied. Girard wants to reopen the timeline clause before the afternoon session. Anna picked up her notepad from the windowsill. She moved toward the door, and this time she did not step aside for anyone in the hallway. Girard reopened the timeline clause the moment everyone was seated. He did it smoothly, almost conversationally, sliding a revised document across the table as if it were a courtesy rather than a maneuver, his cologne arriving half a second before the paper did, something sharp and cedar-edged that filled the room's recycled air. He spoke quickly, layering clause references on top of each other, and Michael felt the familiar sensation of a conversation moving faster than his comprehension of it. He looked at Anna. She was already reading the document. Her eyes moved left to right across the French text with the focused calm of someone who had seen this exact shape of problem before, dressed in different clothes. She looked up. Quote, 122, Girard smiled pleasantly and continued speaking. Quote, 123, Anna replied, her tone unchanged, underscore, underscore, quote, underscore, 124, underscore, underscore. Michael's grip tightened on his pen. Tell him we appreciate the gesture and that we'll review the amendment language with our legal team before any initialing. Anna turned to Girard and delivered this in French, unhurried, gracious, with a particular phrase at the end that made Girard's pleasant smile shift almost imperceptibly. Michael murmured. She paused one beat. Silence dropped over the table like a heavy cloth. Girard's pen stopped moving. His eyes found Anna's face and stayed there. Across the table, Henri Beaumont slowly set down his water glass. The ice clicked once, then nothing. Quote, 1, 2, 9. Beaumont replied, his voice low and private beneath the room's held breath. You did not simply train there. No, Anna replied. I did not. The two lawyers exchanged a look that communicated something fast and wordless. The younger associate's tablet went face down on the table. Beaumont leaned back. He studied Anna for a long moment, the worn flats, the borrowed blazer, the posture that didn't apologize for itself. Then something in his face that had been professionally sealed for 3 hours quietly opened. I heard what happened at Meridian, he replied, in 2018. Anna's hands rested flat on the table. Still. Quote, 135, quote, 136, quote. She met his eyes. Quote, 137, quote. Beaumont turned to Gerard and spoke 3 sentences in French, clipped, certain. Gerard collected the revised amendment document, tapped it once against the table to align the pages, and slid it into his case. It did not come back out. Michael watched all of this without fully understanding the words. But he understood the room. He had spent 20 years learning to read rooms. And this one had just shifted its entire weight, quietly, completely, without a single raised voice. Beaumont opened the original contract to the final page. He uncapped his pen, a heavy, dark instrument that made a soft sound against the paper. Quote, 138, quote. He looked at Anna when he said the last word. Quote, 139, quote. Anna's voice, when she translated, was composed and clear and carried not a single tremor. He's asking if we're ready to sign. Michael looked at her. For the first time all day, she looked back, just briefly, just enough. Tell him yes, Michael replied. The pen scratched against the signature line, once, then twice more. The sound was small, barely audible beneath the hum of the conference room's ventilation. But everyone at the table heard it the way people hear a church bell from a distance, not loud, just certain. The Beaumont group's copy slid back across the table, and Henri Beaumont capped his pen with a soft, final click. It was done. Michael exhaled. The tension left his shoulders like water draining from a basin. Slow, complete, leaving something lighter behind. Caroline pressed both hands flat against her tablet and closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Gerard began collecting documents with the brisk efficiency of a man who has accepted a result he didn't engineer. Beaumont stood. He crossed to Anna's side of the table, not Michael's, and extended his hand. Quote, 142, quote, he replied, his voice carrying the particular warmth of someone who means what they say. Quote, 143, quote, Anna took his hand. Her grip was firm. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 144, underscore, underscore. He held the handshake 1 beat longer than courtesy required. Then he nodded once, picked up his case, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, without turning back, he spoke 1 final sentence in French. Anna translated it quietly. For Michael only. Underscore, underscore, quote, underscore 145, underscore, underscore Michael looked at her. He didn't respond immediately. He let the sentence sit where it landed. 6 months later, the 42nd floor smelled different. The recycling pile outside the corner office was gone, replaced by a proper document system that Anna had implemented in her 3rd week as Director of Francophone Markets and Strategic Partnerships. Her name was on the door in clean sans serif letters. Her office held 2 things from before: the retaped copy of Les Miserables, spine cracked at page 412, and a drawing Marcus had made on her first official day. 2 figures at a table covered in papers, one tall, one small, both smiling. The cleaning staff's salary review was completed in her 2nd week. The scholarship fund was incorporated by month 3, independently administered, with 12 families enrolled in the first cycle. Marcus was one of them, On a Thursday evening in October, Anna stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom that smelled of warm bread rolls and fresh flowers, 300 people in the seats below her, colleagues, partners, and in the fourth row, one 11-year-old boy in a tie he'd knotted himself, sitting very straight. She looked at Marcus for a moment before she spoke. "I was once a woman trained to take up as little space as possible," she began, her voice unhurried, carrying easily across the room. "But sometimes life offers a second chance disguised as a mop and a bucket and a building full of people who haven't learned to look yet." She paused. "What matters is whether you're brave enough to answer when it calls." The applause began before she finished the last word. Afterward, in the corridor outside the ballroom, Michael found her. He straightened his jacket the way he always did when he was about to say something he'd been holding. Quote, 149, quote, he replied, quote, 150, quote. She looked at him for a moment, then she glanced back through the ballroom doors toward the fourth row where Marcus was attempting, unsuccessfully, however, to unknot his tie. She smiled. And that was enough. If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. Drop a comment and tell us, what would you have done in Anna's place?